Learning how to orchestrate can be one of the most fulfilling and rewarding things that we do as a composer, but it can also be equally overwhelming and infuriating if we don't know how to approach it. I personally studied orchestration over the years by myself. I'm going through lots of trial and error, figuring out what works and what doesn't. And eventually, I got to a level where I was comfortable with orchestrating my own pieces using sample libraries, and now I get to do that work for clients as well, bringing their tracks to life through virtual orchestration, and it's such a fun thing to do every single time. So in this video, I want to share with you 3 simple techniques that you can take on board to actually learn orchestration quickly. I don't want to waste your time. These are techniques that you can implement right away, and they will pay big rewards into the future. Either you want to make it as a hobby, like you want to make your own music and orchestrate it, or if you want to work with clients, these 3 tips will help you. So the very first technique that I would argue is the most important is the act of critical listening. So critical listening is all about not just listening to music for enjoyment. You know, there are moments where we sit back, we have our headphones on, and we're just listening because music makes us feel things, right? And that's the way most of the world experiences music. And that's literally what music is made for. But if you want to become a better orchestrator, then what you have to do is deliberately analyze what's going on in the music. And, you know, for me, there's quite a few areas that I appreciate in the music making process, whether that's mixing, mastering, whether that's writing melodies and chords or orchestration. But, you know, for the focus of this video, we're talking about orchestration, right? So let's say you have a pretty good grasp on your melody and harmony writing. You're like, okay, I know how to write simple tunes. I can play them out on my guitar or my piano, and it all sounds great. But how do I actually decide what goes where in terms of the instrumentation? And that really comes down to analyzing your favorite pieces of orchestral music and either writing it down on a piece of paper, like a document, or just taking mental notes of what's happening. So this is what I did. When I was growing up, I listened to quite a few orchestral scores. One of my favorites was the Super Mario Galaxy soundtrack from Nintendo. And it was the first time they really recorded a live orchestra for one of their video games. And it was just a breathtaking soundtrack, like the Good Egg Galaxy theme, the Gusty Garden Galaxy theme. These are 2 absolute classics from that soundtrack that truly inspired me to start writing orchestral music and, you know, giving me the bug to want to learn how to orchestrate. And so I remember one of those days sitting in the car, driving to high school, and I was just listening to one of the themes over and over again and starting to internalize, wow, this chorus melody right here, my favorite hook of this piece is being played by the violins. And it makes it sound so warm and nostalgic, and it's lifting up, like it's lifting my emotional spirit up here because it's soaring super high and it sounds so smooth and legato because, you know, these live players are really feeling that passage that they're playing, and it creates just a super beautiful, moving listening experience. And then at the same time, okay, I'm like, so if the violins are playing that high melody, what's happening in the background? Well, we have these little short strings. Maybe it's the violas, the cellos, the basses. They're playing spiccatos in the background to create that rhythmic accompaniment. But we also have the snare drum adding a little bit of that military flair and creating a sense of intention behind the track. Like we're on an adventure. We want to go somewhere, right? We want to push forward. Maybe the brass is coming in with little interjections every so often to, again, create that adventurous feeling. And the woodwinds are doing these scalar runs up and down. Like you start to pick out what are these different elements that are happening in the score, and you don't necessarily have to write them down if you don't want to, but I would recommend it if you learn better like that. But the way I learned orchestration the best was by listening to my favorite scores, taking mental notes of how these composers and arrangers would orchestrate their melodies, how they would arrange their accompaniment patterns to support those melodies, what sort of rhythmic accompaniments are they doing with the percussion or the other orchestral sections, and starting to apply those same techniques to my scores because I wanted to write music that, you know, resonated with who I was, and at the time I was really influenced by that Super Mario Galaxy soundtrack. So my very first pieces drew a lot of inspiration from that soundtrack, and naturally I used a lot of those same orchestration devices to create that same feeling that I wanted and that I heard from that soundtrack. So that's the very first thing I would recommend. No matter what style of music you want to create, find your favorite scores in that style because you likely have been influenced by those scores in the first place, and, you know, take notes of what's happening there. Really critically listen to the devices that are happening. Whether that's live orchestration or MIDI, it doesn't really matter, but pick out what's happening and start to take those notes and how you can apply those to your own music as well. The second thing I would recommend is to actually then mock up your favorite scores. So now we're taking the next step. Not only are we listening and ingesting what is working for that piece, but we can actually go into our DAWs and try to recreate that piece of music. Now, this is one of the best things you can do because it really trains your ear. It forces you to listen to, again, what is the track doing? How is it eliciting that emotional response from me, right? Like, what is it doing that's making it feel that way? And once you find out what that is, you can try to mock up that exact same score in your DAW using your sample libraries. Now, I personally like to use the Cinematic Studio series. They have a wonderful set of libraries, the ensemble strings, solo strings, brass, woodwinds. At the moment, they don't have percussion yet, but fingers crossed for that soon. But yeah, I remember mocking up John Williams' E.T. flying theme, for example, using those libraries. And it was super fun. And it really gave me an insight into the orchestration techniques that John Williams was using for that score. And it taught me a lot in terms of how to get certain effects from these instruments. So mocking up is a wonderful, wonderful way to learn because not only are you learning orchestration techniques, but you're also learning your sample libraries too. Like what do you have to do to achieve that same result, from your libraries that you're hearing in the live tracks, and using your libraries is the best way to do that. So that's the second one, mocking up your favorite pieces. I've done this as well for my Disney medley. It's one of my more popular videos on the channel as well. I think I brought together 7 or 8 of my favorite Disney classics and put them into one orchestral medley using my sample libraries to mock that up. And again, I was sort of referencing the original pieces, but trying to put my own spin on them as well in terms of the keys, in terms of the orchestration. But you can really only do that if you're listening to these tracks and sort of critically analyzing what's going on there. The third and final thing you can do to really learn orchestration quickly is to study scores. Now, yes, this will involve some degree of notation reading. So being able to read sheet music is an absolute plus. I strongly believe that anyone who can read sheet music to a sufficient level should be able to analyze music decently well, right? And growing up, I was in the RCM, the Royal Conservatory of Music. So in order to get my ARCT diploma for piano, I had to take all these different theory classes, harmony, history, counterpoint, analysis, all this different stuff. And reading music has really helped me to appreciate all the nuances and the devices behind all this beautiful romantic, classical, Baroque music that has gone on before us. The centuries past, a lot of beautiful, intricate music has been written by these beautiful composers. So, having the ability to read music is a plus, but you certainly don't have to in order to make great music. But I would certainly recommend, at least learning the basics of notation, learning how to read treble clef, bass clef, transposing instruments, how they apply to your scores. And once you have your hands on a certain score, even if it's just a PDF score online, what I'd like to do is to recommend listening to, let's say, the first 8 bars of a theme. Let's say it's a 16, 32 bar theme. You want to pick out the first 8 bars and listen to that piece of music or listen to that phrase while studying the score at the same time. Now, maybe if it's a full orchestral setup, there's so many instruments to pay attention to, right? So you can't literally think about every single instrument at the same time. But maybe we decide to start with the melody. So maybe we have a soaring violin melody in the top. Then as you're listening to that melody, you're focused on it and you read the violin part, you read the violin string part and take a look at all the notes that are happening, the way it's been phrased, the way it's articulated, all that stuff. Then you move on to the accompaniment parts, the lower strings, for example. Then maybe you listen again, and now you're listening to the woodwinds. How are they adding effects to these to the score? Is it creating a fluttering effect? Is it making it feel more adventurous? Or is it adding more depth and color to the existing string line? Like, these are all different takeaways that you can come away with if you analyze section by section, part by part, and start to take the time to really try to understand what the orchestration or what the orchestrator was doing when putting this arrangement together. It's a really, really great learning experience, and I can highly recommend that as well. But out of all 3 of these, the one that I personally adopted the most naturally was critical listening. I think because I had to study scores so much growing up and I had to read so much notation, I just got a little bit bored of it over time. And so, as a casual listener for some of my favorite soundtracks, I just found critically listening the easiest thing to do because I already love the music. So why wouldn't I want to learn, the devices that are happening behind the music that are coming together to make it work, right? So that just seemed the most natural to me, and that's what I recommend to all my students as well. So just to quickly recap, those are the 3 devices I would do. Number 1 is to critically listen, either take notes or take mental notes of what's actually happening in the score and apply those to your next piece of music. Number 2 is to not hesitate to actually mock up your favorite pieces, even if it's just one of the pieces you really, really like. Take the time to use your favorite sample libraries, find the right articulations, and mock this thing up to match the original as clearly as possible. And that will really, really help you learn your libraries, but also figure out what's happening in the live version or the official version. And it will teach you just so much in terms of the process. And the third and final thing is to score study. So if you have scores on hand, Omni Publishing is wonderful. They actually sell like the full books of the full scores, which is really cool. And Hal Leonard and Alfred Music, like these are all wonderful companies that sell scores. But if you have scores, definitely analyze them, listen to the music along with it, just analyze small fragments at a time and see what's actually happening behind the scores to make it work. And I guarantee you, these 3 things will absolutely step up your orchestration game like nothing else. And you'll step into your future orchestrations, your mockups with that confidence, knowing that anything that comes into your head, you can pretty much get into your DAW without any hassles. It's a really cool thing to feel. And yeah, I think when you have the confidence to orchestrate, just making music becomes so much more fun in general, because you know that you're not hampered by a lack of knowledge or a lack of experience. It will just become easier and easier over time. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, do let me know down below. And if you want to take that next step with me, you want to learn my full step-by-step process when it comes to making music, I've got my free workshop there down below as well in the description. I call it the Complete Composer's Framework. And I take you from, coming up with a very first idea all the way to a polished final master. And it goes through step by step how to do this. And I explain every single step along the way. So if you want that full method, check out that workshop anytime. It's there for you in the description. And it's a thank you for watching this video today. But in any case, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much and have a great week. See you soon.